You drive it, you define it. That's how Hyundai wants us to view this car, their small Kona SUV. If you like cars of this kind, you're probably going to like this one because it ticks all the usual boxes in terms of style and fashionability. There's more though to this little crossover than initially meets the eye.
Every mainstream brand you can think of is investing in SUVs these days, but delve into the detail and you'll find that some are taking this segment more seriously than others. Here's a manufacturer who knows just what a difference a car of this kind can make, with a product designed precisely for the needs of buyers in the fastest growing part of this sector, that for smaller B-segment supermini derived designs. Welcome to the Hyundai Kona. Now, when we say supermini derived, we normally mean just that. A little crossover with taller, jauntier bodywork that under the skin is pretty much exactly the same as a supermini it'll be derived from. That, for example, is what partner brand Kia did in creating its rival Stonic SUV from its Rio model. And Hyundai too could, in the same way, have built this Kona from its little i20 hatch, but it hasn't. The platform here is completely bespoke, partly because the brand felt the need to do the job properly, and partly because it wanted to be able to include within the range an all-electric variant that would need very different chassis technology. A serious player then, which is somewhat refreshing given that Hyundai's previous showroom offering to buyers in this class, a version of the i20 hatch with plastic-clad wheel arches and active badging, was anything but that was then. Launched in the autumn of 2016, the Kona is now the entry point to the company's expanded and now much wider ranging cutting-edge SUV lineup, slotting in just below the mid-sized Tucson, which itself sits below the larger Santa Fe and Grand Santa Fe models. Together, all these cars are shortly expected to account for up to half of the brand's total worldwide sales output, reflecting the fact that on its own, the current Tucson found over 250,000 buyers in its first couple of years on the market. On that basis, this more affordable, more accessible Kona model is likely to become a familiar sight on our roads, a product, in its maker's words, of a state of mind that Hyundai refers to as can-do-ism. That's what drove the brand to develop the world's first mass-produced hydrogen fuel cell vehicle and to launch the Ioniq, the only car available with hybrid, plug-in and all-electric options. Now it aims to fundamentally shake up B-segment SUV territory too. But is this Kona the car to do that? Let's find out. Is there really any point in making a small SUV really rewarding to drive? Well, the major makers apparently don't seem to think so. They're encouraged by customers who don't appear to have much interest in this issue either. So it's not really any surprise to find that the Kona is a pretty unmemorable thing to punt around. If you are a target market buyer, you might quite possibly rather like it for that and approve of the attributes that Hyundai has prioritised here: cruising refinement, ease of use, and the way that the company's light but accurate motor-driven power steering system makes the car so easy to precisely place on the tarmac, whether you're in town or threading your way at speed through corners on the open road. An early failing with B-segment SUVs tended to be the rather over-stiff ride that they usually delivered, thanks to suspension normally firmed up to compensate for the taller body shell. More recent sector arrivals like this Kona are generally less fidgety in that regard, although on uneven surfaces you still rather get the feeling that bumps are being rounded off rather than soaked up. That's even the case with the most sophisticated multi-link rear suspension system that's on offer in this particular top-of-the-range variant, a setup limited to minority interest four-wheel drive models like the one that we're trying here. The two-wheel drive derivatives that almost all Kona customers will choose stick with a simpler torsion beam arrangement, which can become more unsettled by things like potholes and road expansion joints, but which then settles down and delivers a reasonably comfortable demeanour at higher speeds. So let's talk about engines, and primarily about the unit that dominates the Kona lineup, the 120 PS 1 litre turbo petrol power plant that this car borrows from its more conventional i20 and i30 hatch showroom stablemates, and which it shares also with its Kia Stonic SUV cousin. Now, we've now accumulated quite a lot of experience of this little 3-cylinder T-GDi offering in various Hyundai Group models, and we generally feel it's been well worth your attention, provided you don't care too much about refinement, that is. The Korean maker has chosen not to bless this particular little motor with a balancer shaft to improve that. The rival Peugeot 2008's similarly configured 3-cylinder PureTech unit shows just what a difference that can make, dialing out the buzzy thrumminess that you get under hard acceleration in a 1 litre Kona. Still, as with the similar EcoBoost engine in a rival Ford EcoSport, the sensation's not unpleasant, and it could even be said to add something to the character of the car. There's certainly nothing wrong with this unit's performance, although you will have to adjust to the fact that, like similar units from rival brands, it works within a fairly narrow power band. Below about 2,000 RPM, not much happens, so in commuting traffic there are occasions where you find yourself sometimes waiting for the motor to spin up into its sweet spot before meaningful forward motion is resumed. Of course, if you thrash it about everywhere and try to replicate the quoted performance stats, rest 62 miles an hour in 12 seconds en route to 112 mph, that will be less of an issue, but that feels a very un-Kona-like way to drive. If that is a problem for you in seeking a mainstream Kona model, then your dealer will steer you over towards the alternative 115 PS 1.6 litre CRDi diesel engine, this improved U series unit offering much more prodigious reserves of pulling power. Both the base petrol and diesel engines come only with 6-speed manual transmission and 2-wheel drive. As an alternative though, Hyundai does offer a couple of higher powered petrol and diesel power plants that can be had only with a DCT 7-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox and an on-demand 4-wheel drive system. Choose between a 136 PS version of the 1.6 litre CRDi diesel, which thanks to its lusty 320 Nm torque figure is the variant that you'd almost certainly choose in the unlikely event that you were looking to tow a small trailer or a little caravan with your Kona, or the engine we're trying here, the 177 PS 1.6 litre T-GDi petrol unit that's capable of 62 miles an hour from rest in 7.9 seconds en route to 127 miles an hour. That's if you select the most dynamic of the 3 drive modes the auto gearbox has to offer. That's Sport, the other 2 being Comfort and Eco. As for off-road capability, well, small SUVs like this one aren't expected to provide very much of that, so Hyundai hasn't delivered much of it here. As mentioned previously though, in this case we do happen to be driving a 4-wheel drive variant, which features the usual kind of on-demand system, which is able to push up to 50% of torque to the rear wheels should a lack of traction require it. Even here though, you're going to be pretty limited in your off-road exploits by the relatively modest 170 mils of ride height, though muddy car parks, snowy driveways and light field tracks ought to all be well within your remit. Should you though get this Kona somewhere you really shouldn't have ventured with it in the first place, a lock setting is also available to fix torque split 50-50 between front and rear, so you'll have a better chance of easing the car into forward motion. But of course, this car's priorities really lie within the urban jungle, which is target territory for what is certainly the most interesting variant in the range. Here, a 64 kilowatt-hour battery claims to be able to offer a fossil fuel-free driving range of over 210 miles. It's a feel-good stat, and the Kona ought to be a feel-good car. For the right kind of buyer, we think it will be. A car of this kind has to evoke a reaction from you. That's part of the point of it. Now, the Kona should do that with its muscular toning, sensuous surfaces and high contrast fender cladding. It all combines to make this little SUV seem a little more serious in its intent than some of its rivals, which actually isn't that far from the truth. Most competitors in this segment are merely stylized versions of the existing superminis they're based on. The Kona, in contrast, is one of the few contenders in the class boasting boasting its own purpose-built SUV platform, which is why it's one of the only ones that can be engineered to offer the option of all-electric power. There'll certainly be no mistaking this front end when it appears in your rearview mirror. The mesh-patterned, so-called cascading front grille, flanked by unusual headlamp pods that can be specified with full LED illumination. Slimmer lamp clusters with LED daytime running lights and turn indicators sit here just above, framing the edges of this smoothly contoured bonnet. Lower down, the outer corners of the bumper incorporate narrow air curtain slits that reduce turbulence around the wheels, while this centre lower panel incorporates fog lamps and also has a silver matte finish to create what Hyundai rather ambitiously hopes is the illusion of some kind of front skid plate. The side profile is characterised by an even chunkier, more purposeful demeanour than you'd normally expect from a car of this kind. This super short rear overhang and a front wing design that's supposed to suggest forward direction. That's also the purpose of this rather unusual mid-level style increase, which rises up from just below the door mirror before flowing back along the door handles and easing into the power-packed rear C-pillar. Roof rails are standard, providing you avoid entry-level trim, and brighter paint colours can be accompanied by this contrast colour roof finish. Lower down, a further sill-level style increase gives a flanksome shape, and that separates black plastic-clad wheel arches that house alloy rims of between 16 and 18 inches in size. We've got the 18 inches here. Move to the back and the styling flourishes come equally thick and fast. Your eye is drawn by the wraparound cladding that houses the indicators and the reversing lights, and then perhaps by these slim high-set LED tail lamps. This neat roof spoiler incorporates an LED brake light, while lower down this silvered skid plate style panel is intended to add the crossover demeanour. Let's offer a bit of dimensional perspective from back here too. Now, B-segment SUVs of this type are typically sized midway between conventional supermini and family hatchback models, and this one's no different. It's around about 13 centimetres shorter and around 6 centimetres wider than Hyundai's i20 Supermini. Enough of all that, let's take a seat at the wheel, where two things tend to be expected from a car of this kind. Firstly, that it will position you a little higher at the wheel than you would be in an ordinary family hatch. And secondly, that the decor will be potentially a little brighter and more interesting to suit the jauntier lifestyle that potential buyers are expected to have. Now, to be frank, the seating position isn't really raised enough for you to notice very much of a difference. Although, I don't know, perhaps that's a good thing, as it'll aid transition into this car from something more ordinary. The colour thing is easier to appreciate, or at least it will be if you have yourself a plusher Kona variant that's fitted out with black leather upholstery. With mere cloth trim, it's not possible to specify one of the optional colour packs, which will add colour-coded cabin flashings in either orange, lime, or as in this case, red. Now, these highlights surround the gear shift, the starter button, the air vents, plus the chosen colours also replicated onto the seat stitching and, rather unusually, onto the seat belts too. It is a pity you can't add in this kind of bright work onto more affordable models. Even with it, there's a tendency for the cabin to feel unremittingly dark and a little sombre. Still, most of the things that you touch regularly feel very pleasant to your fingertips, and cheaper materials are better hidden than is the case with many rivals. And okay, so you won't mistake this cabin for that of an Audi Q2, but a lot of thought's clearly gone into the control layout and the sheer solidity of the various fixtures and fittings. Better still, in place of the shapeless, short journey-only front seats that often tend to be fitted to cars in this class, the Kona gets unexpectedly cushy pews that should allow all shapes and sizes to get comfortable. Now, they position you very comfortably in front of a grippy, three-spoke, leather-trimmed, multifunction steering wheel that's just the right thickness. And through this, you view two clearly presented dials, which are separated now either by a simple 3.5-inch trip computer or the classy-looking 4.2-inch colour driver's supervision cluster display that's fitted to plusher models like this one. Anything this can't tell you will almost certainly be covered off by the centre dash touchscreen that sprouts from the middle of the dash at the top of the centre stack here. Entry-level models get monitors that are restricted in size to either 5 or 7 inches. The latter, the 7-inch version, incorporates the display audio technology that also features on this top spec 8-inch screen. There's no separate iDrive style control for this setup like you get in, say, a rival Mazda CX-3, but we do like the ease of use of this display with its clear, neat graphics and its usefully large flanking shortcut buttons. This is your interface to controlling the satellite navigation, the DAB audio setup, and a package of TomTom live services which will alert you to speed cameras, they'll update you on the weather, and they'll also provide accurate information on traffic jams and roadworks. Now, you can also connect in your handset using the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring systems. What else? Well, as is often the case in cars of this sort, rearward visibility is compromised by the highly stylised rear end with its thick rear pillars and small rear screen. Hyundai is apparently aware of this, which is why rear parking sensors and a rear view camera come as standard above entry-level trim. And cabin practicality, well, the tiny door pockets and the restricted capacity glove box don't get things off to a very good start in this regard, but things do pick up once you cast your eye further around the interior. There's a deep lidded box between the seats here, though it doesn't feature any phone attachment ports. That would be very useful if you wanted to charge your handset away from prying eyes. These are instead all provided above the storage area here at the foot of the centre stack, which can be fitted out with a wireless charging mat, and above which is an aux-in point, a USB port, and a couple of 12-volt sockets. You also get a couple of cup holders down here by the gear stick and a coin crevice in the door pulls. Also pleased to see that Hyundai has remembered to include an overhead compartment for your sunglasses. And in the rear, well, it's in this part of the car that you're likely to be most keenly reminded that you've bought an SUV based on a supermini size chassis rather than that of family hatchback. The Hyundai Tucson SUV that you could have bought for only a fraction more on the other side of your dealer's showroom is a substantial 310mm lengthier than a Kona, so that's a shortfall you would really expect to notice once you take a seat inside. As it turns out, it's not too bad in here for the carriage of two folk, providing they're not especially lanky of leg. I mean, if they are, then compromises will need to be made by the front seat occupants in order to be able to accommodate them. Now, the body shell is slightly wider than it would be in a conventional supermini, although not by enough to make the prospect of sharing the back seat with two other adults a particularly comfortable one, and that's despite this relatively low centre transmission tunnel here. Still, that's the case with all other models in this class, and what's on offer back here? It's a big improvement on the cramped quarters that are provided by a rival Nissan Juke. Given all the fuss made about creating this Kona from an all-new platform and being able to design it properly for the real needs of buyers from the ground up, we were a bit disappointed to find there's no option to get the kind of useful sliding seat base that you will find in rivals like Citroën C3 Aircross or the Renault Captur, nor can you recline the seatbacks either. Still, you do get seatback storage nets, a couple of Isofix child seat mounts for the two outer seats, and on top models like this one, a centre armrest incorporating a couple of cup holders. So let's finish with a few words on boot space. The tailgate is light to lift and it reveals a 361 litre luggage area. Now that's class competitive but unremarkable by current SUV B segment standards. A rival Citroën C3 Aircross, for example, provides up to 520 litres. Certainly the space provided here could prove a little limiting if you have a young family or you like to engage in the kind of active pursuits that advertising departments seem usually to associate with SUVs. Still, at least the load bay is well shaped with little intrusion either from the wheel arches or the suspension turrets, and it has both a wide opening and a low lip. Unfortunately, there's no adjustable height boot floor available, but you do get this compartmentalised lower space that could be used to shield more valuable items from prying eyes. Push forward the 60/40 split folding rear bench and you'll reveal a relatively flat loading floor with as much as 1143 litres of total fresh air if you load up to the roof. If you're going to use all that, you might also want the 4 smart securing hooks that are provided to keep more sizable goods safely in place. Bear in mind that entry-level S variants offer slightly more luggage room than the figures we just quoted because, rather unwisely, these variants have to do without the space-saver spare wheel that otherwise resides down here at the very bottom of the cargo compartment. So, what will it cost to buy this car and what will you get for the money? Well, let's see. Now, the bulk of the range is based around the package that Hyundai thinks most will want, a Kona with the 120 PS 1 litre T-GDi petrol engine and 2-wheel drive. Now, for that, you'll pay somewhere in the £16,500 to £22,500 bracket. Pretty typical figures by class standards. The pokier 1.6 litre T-GDi petrol engine we've been trying here comes only with 4-wheel drive, DCT auto transmission and top-spec trim, which is why it will require a budget of at least £25,000. Small wonder that Hyundai thinks this derivative will account for just 2% of all Kona sales in our market. Now, the diesel range has a similar structure. The base 115 PS 1.6 litre CRDi unit is offered only with 2-wheel drive and volume trim options. Alternatively, the 136 PS version of the same engine is available only with DCT auto transmission, 4-wheel drive and top-spec trim. And finally, you'll certainly need to be thinking in terms of a £25,000 budget if you want the all-electric variant. Our role here is to give you a little perspective on those various figures, and that's something we'll begin to do by trying to illustrate how this car's been priced against its various existing showroom stablemates. Now, you can certainly see why you might be tempted by one were you to be browsing in a Hyundai dealership. A base 1 litre T-GDi Kona will, for example, cost you just a few £100 more than a version of the brand's smaller i20 supermini that's fitted with a less powerful version of the same engine. And that kind of Kona model will also save you either just above or just below £1,000 if you were to pitch it price-wise against a similarly spec'd Hyundai i30 family hatch fitted out with the same power plant. As for comparing a Kona to the next model up in Hyundai's SUV range, the mid-size Tucson, well, comparisons here are more difficult to make because the two cars use quite different engine lineups. The Tucson prices from around £20,000 and its greater interior space would make it tempting as an alternative to an upper spec Kona variant, but the running costs would be significantly higher. Enough on alternative Hyundai models. A more pertinent discussion relates to how this car's pricing compares to that of rivals from other brands in the SUV market's smallest segment. The most obvious competitor to start with is Kia's Stonic because it shares some of the Kona's engines. Entry-level Stonic and Kona models equipped with the volume 1 litre T-GDi petrol unit cost about the same, but Hyundai offers a much wider range of specifications and trimming options further up the range, which the brand hopes will be enough to sway buyers its way. But will you still covet a Kona once you've checked out the value propositions on offer elsewhere in the sector? Well, perhaps. Now, when evaluating rivals, do bear in mind that in many cases, likely competitors may look cheaper only because at their price list starting points, they're offering the kind of really feeble, bargain-priced petrol units that Hyundai hasn't bothered with here. So do make sure you're comparing like with like. Now, for simplicity, we'll use the Kona's volume 120 PS 1 litre T-GDi petrol engine as a benchmark and rate its pricing against similar units from equivalent competitors. And we'll start with the two most successful class players, Nissan's Juke and Renault's Captur. Now, the Nissan could save you a little in comparably spec'd form, but it's cramped inside. The Renault might also be a few £100 cheaper, but it fronts up with a volume TCE 90 petrol engine with about 30 PS less than you'll get from a 1 litre Kona. And that is a performance deficit which will be noticeable out on the open road. Plus, the Renault doesn't handle as well and doesn't feel as well built either. Of course, there are lots of other segment options, including 3 from the French PSA group, which all share much the same platform and engineering: Peugeot's 2008, Vauxhall's Crossland X and Citroen's C3 Aircross. The rather bland Peugeot might be the easiest of those 3 to dismiss, with an equivalent turbo petrol engine or a comparably powerful diesel. List pricing could easily see a 2008 costing you at least £2,000 more than a directly competing rival Kona model. Vauxhall's Crossland X, that's priced closer to the level of this Hyundai, but in comparably trimmed turbo petrol form, it would still probably set you back £700 to £1,000 more. We'd be more tempted by the spacious Citroen C3 Aircross, equivalent turbo petrol versions of which are priced comparably against this Kona, but the Citroen simply doesn't feel as well put together as this Hyundai, and its looks, they're an acquired taste. As for other rivals in this segment, well, a Fiat 500X costs around £1,500 less in entry-level form, but only if you order it with a very inefficient 1.6-litre petrol engine. Get a 500X with petrol and diesel power plants comparable in performance to those of this Kona, and the Fiat would actually cost you more. What else? Well, you'll pay a similar amount for comparable versions of Suzuki's Vitara and Ford's EcoSport, but the Vitara is clunkier to drive and the Ford is smaller inside. Something like a Mitsubishi ASX, that would cost you about the same as this Hyundai, but it would be nothing like as efficient to run. And you could easily find yourself paying in the region of around £1,500 more for comparable versions of segment rivals like Vauxhall's Mocha X, Jeep's Renegade and Mazda's CX-3. Now you can, of course, pay less than Hyundai's asking here to get an alternative to this Kona in this class, but then you'll get less too. A SsangYong Tivoli could save you up to around £3,000 or more, but that price gap will be much reduced if you equipped a Tivoli to Kona levels, and much of the price difference that then remained would be eroded over the duration of your ownership period by higher running costs and lower residuals. Broaden the scope of your search. You could even theoretically get yourself a comparable car of this kind in the really affordable £11,000 to £13,000 bracket if you went for a Suzuki Ignis, which is too small for family use, or a Dacia Duster, which is a much clunkier proposition for urban driving. But let's get to the bottom line here, which is, whatever you pitch it against, the value proposition of this Hyundai ends up looking strong. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it really is a Kona that you want, you're going to need to know just how generous Hyundai has been with the standard specification. So let's take a look at that now. Now, not many likely buyers are going to want the entry-level S specification, but those that do can expect to find 16-inch alloy wheels, auto headlamps with LED daytime running lights, cruise control, air conditioning, driver seat height adjustment, and a 6-speaker audio system with a 5-inch screen and Bluetooth phone connectivity, plus a package of useful safety items that we'll cover off in a minute. For most Kona folk, the starting point for perusal of the range will come with the next level of trim up, SE, and it's obvious why. The exterior styling really requires the finishing touches applied at this level, things like larger 17-inch wheels, roof rails and front fog lamps. We think you're going to really need the SE variant's rear parking sensors, rear parking camera and its space-saver spare wheel too. And we think you're going to really want the display audio infotainment system that you have to reach at least to this level of range to get. This setup is offered in its base form with a 7-inch screen and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto phone mirroring connectivity. Lumbar support for the driver's seat and leather for the steering wheel and the gear knob are also included. For demonstration purposes though, your dealer will probably have limited themselves to one of the plusher premium spec variants, all of which are recognisable by exterior features like larger 18-inch wheels, rear privacy window tinting, solar front window glass and various bits of silvered exterior trim. As well as this, progressing from SE to premium trim, we'll see your Kona gain the much more sophisticated version of the display audio system with its larger 8-inch screen, 8-speaker Krell audio system and satellite navigation setup with its various associated Hyundai Live services. Premium trim also gets you climate control, an auto dimming rear view mirror, keyless entry and auto wipers. Plus, you'll need to buy into the Kona range at least this level in order to be able to specify one of the brighter vivid colours, which will allow you to pay extra for a contrast coloured roof. Want more? Then of course the plushest Premium SE and Premium GT models provide it. Both get luxury touches like leather upholstery, heated and cooled power adjustable front seats, a heated steering wheel, power folding mirrors, front parking sensors, a rear central armrest and a head-up display. And to that tally, this top Premium GT variant further adds full LED technology for the front and rear lamps, autonomous emergency braking and a larger 4.2-inch colour LCD display in the instrument binnacle. Bear in mind, by the way, that you have to have either a Premium SE or a Premium GT model if you want to have the kind of colour personalised interior that you'll see in Hyundai's advertising and in our pictures here. Rather annoyingly, the colour packs that provide this aren't available as an option on any lesser trim level, these adding colour-coded cabin flashings in either orange, lime or red. They do come as standard on Premium SE and Premium GT models though, and they add coloured highlights that surround the gear shift, the starter button and the air vents, plus that chosen colour is also replicated onto the seat stitching and rather unusually onto the seat belts too. So much for the standard stuff. What about options? Well, there aren't many. Your dealer will offer you various metallic or pearl paint colours, and we've already mentioned the vivid palette of different brighter shades that you'll have to choose between if you want a contrasting coloured roof. Blue Lagoon, Acid Yellow, or as in this case, Pulse Red painted models can be ordered with a Phantom Black roof. While if you go for the orangey Tangerine Comet finish, a request for a contrast coloured top will see your Kona come with a slightly lighter Dark Night coloured roof. You won't be able to order a contrast roof at all if you take up the option offered on the Premium SE and Premium GT models of a powered tilt and slide sunroof. Let's finish by looking at this car from a safety perspective. Now, over 50% of the strong light body is fashioned from ultra high strength steel and features a ring-shaped cabin structure that disperses crash energy in various directions in the event of a collision, reducing the consequences of an impact for passengers. Now, to build on this, we'd hoped that Hyundai might have set a precedent in this class by including autonomous braking as standard equipment right across the range. As it is, buyers of virtually all variants have to pay extra for a safety pack in order to get it. That system's well worth having though. It's operational between 5 and 50 miles an hour and it scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential accident hazards, which can include pedestrians. Now, if something or someone is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or perhaps you aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. You do at least get 2 camera-driven features across the range that it isn't necessary to pay extra for. Driver Attention Alert, which monitors your driving reactions for drowsiness, and Lane Keep Assist, which alerts you if you drift over the lane delineating lines on the highway, and if you don't respond, will then automatically use subtle steering guidance to ease the car back into the right position on the road. Premium SE and Premium GT models also include a rear cross traffic alert system that uses the same radar and camera setup to alert you to oncoming traffic if you're reversing out of a parking space. The full LED headlamps of a Premium GT variant also get HBA, high beam assist, that automatically dips them at night in the face of oncoming traffic. As for more familiar standard safety stuff, well, every Kona offers twin front, side and curtain airbags, as well as ESC, electronic stability control, and VSM, vehicle stability management, that includes torque vectoring to brake an inner wheel if the car's running wide through curves, bringing it back onto a safe course. Talking of turns, there's also cornering brake control, which delivers asymmetrical brake pressure to counter loss of traction when braking in tight curves, and a straight line stability feature, which senses any difference in applied brake pressure between the right and left of the car and which intervenes to keep it straight. In addition, ABS brakes have a brake assist feature that helps in emergency stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by an emergency stop signalling feature that flashes the hazard lights to let them know what's going on. And there's ISOFIX child seat mountings, a tyre pressure monitoring system that keeps an eye out for punctures, and a hill start assist control feature which prevents the car from rolling backwards as you set off on inclines. Since the huge majority of Kona sales will be based around variants fitted with the brand's 1-litre T-GDi petrol engine, it's just as well that this little 120 PS 3-cylinder turbo unit is a relatively frugal thing. If you choose to avoid entry-level trim, it's capable of 52.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 125 grams per kilometre of CO2. And it wasn't very long ago that you'd have needed a diesel to get figures like that in a small SUV. In comparison, the same engine fitted to a Hyundai i20 supermini delivers 58.9 mpg and 112 grams per kilometre, so you can see that there is still quite a premium to pay for the fashionability of SUV motoring. Now, it's also mentioned in passing that with entry-level S-spec trim, you can do a little better than the figures we've just quoted and supposedly get to 54.3 mpg and 117 grams per kilometre, and that's because an S-spec Kona rides on smaller 16-inch alloy rims and it doesn't have to cart around the extra weight of a space-saver spare wheel. As for the other engines, well, of course, the 1.6-litre CRDi diesel units do a lot better. Expect a fuel economy improvement of up to 30% and an emissions improvement of around about 20% if you paid the extra for one of those. At the opposite end of the spectrum, the 1.6-litre T-GDi petrol unit that we're trying here isn't especially efficient at all. That's because this derivative puts out 177 PS. It's mated only to DCT auto transmission and it can only be had with four-wheel drive, so its returns are rated at 42.2 mpg and 153 grams per kilometre. That's despite the fact that this variant offers a selectable eco driving mode, and of course, like all Kona models, it gets an engine start-stop system too. One day, probably quite soon in our lifetimes, those kinds of readings simply aren't going to be acceptable from any kind of small car anymore. And it's at that point that thoughts are going to turn increasingly to the possibility of buying an all-electric variant. And that's something that the Kona lineup is currently almost unique in this segment in being able to provide. The battery-powered Kona uses the same LG Chem developed powertrain that General Motors has also purchased for its US market Chevrolet Bolt model. That's a setup using a 64 kilowatt-hour battery that claims to be able to offer a fully charged up driving range of over 210 miles. Switching back to the more conventional models, let's cover off the final few running cost issues that you might want to be briefed on. We'll start with likely residual values, and they're a lot higher than they used to be on mainstream Hyundai models. Independent experts reckon that after 3 years and 60,000 miles, a volume 1-litre T-GDi SE version of this Kona will still be worth £6,450. That's 37% of its original value. An even stronger buying incentive is a 5-year unlimited mileage warranty that comes as standard. That's backed up by breakdown cover that lasts the same length of time and free annual vehicle health checks over the duration. True rival brand Kia claims to better this package by offering a similar 7-year deal, but there you're limited to 100,000 miles. When it comes to servicing, the petrol variants need regular garage visits every 12 months or 10,000 miles, while the diesel doubles that mileage to 20,000. If you want to budget ahead for routine maintenance, there are various Hyundai Sense packages which offer fixed price servicing over 2, 3 or 5-year periods. You can pay for your plan monthly and you can add MOTs into the 3 or 5-year packages for an extra fee. Another final financial consideration is insurance, of course. If we focus on the 1-litre T-GDi petrol variant that most buyers will be considering, then you're looking at Group 9 cover if you get it with S or SE trim, or Group 10 if you go for Premium or Premium SE spec. This 4-wheel drive 1.6-litre T-GDi model is rated at Group 19. Until the arrival of this Kona, cars of this kind had been all about style over substance, which was fair enough, given that to be what most buyers in the SUV B segment wanted. We'd been waiting for one though, with a depth of design that might enable a model of this sort to do a bit more, and Hyundai couldn't resist the opportunity to provide it. Unlike rivals, their contender is engineered for all-electric power, but even if you choose it with the kind of conventional engine that we've been trying here, there's lots to like, primarily things like safety provision, equipment levels, and the 1-litre T-GDi petrol engine that most buyers choose. Media connectivity, that's well up to standard too, and that comprehensive 5-year warranty package will continue to be a valuable showroom incentive. Other issues? Yes, a few. That new platform should have been spec'd to deliver a bigger boot and a more flexible rear passenger compartment. And some may wonder why this car's rather conventional driving position isn't a bit more SUV-like. Otherwise, most of the criticisms that you could make apply to just about every other model in this fashionable segment too. Adding weight and height to any car won't help its efficiency or its drive dynamics, although this one deals with that compromise better than most. Which is important because the Kona faces enormous competition in a market sector that currently every mainstream brand wants a part of. So, does this car have what it takes to stand out? Well, most agree that it's been styled to do so, which in this segment is half the battle. Only time will tell whether its remaining attributes will be enough for this model to be able to play the major role assigned to it in propelling Hyundai to prominence as Europe's leading Asian automotive brand by 2021. Such is the ambition that comes with this maker's mindset of can-doism. You can't help respecting that.